Key issue 2 starts off by talking about a bulk reducing industry, and copper is a great example of this geographic reasoning. It's pretty neat. So we're talking about copper, and you have to mine it, then you have to deal with the concentration, you have to smelt it, you have to refine it, you have to do all of those things, and so you're dealing with real heavy rock. And so you want to locate near that so you don't have to transport. You want to reduce your transportation costs. So what that means is that bulk reducing industries will locate themselves near the input. And as we'll see in a second on the map, manufacturing is not bulk reducing, so it can locate near the markets. So here we are in Arizona. Incidentally, anybody who's ever been out there, you see that the dirt, the soil is red, and that's, when I think of Arizona, I think about red soil. When I think about Virginia, I think about green. It's just green, but Arizona is so arid, and it's got that nice red color to it. In any event, this is one of the biggest copper mines in the world. And looking at the map here, what you see is that there's most concentration in Arizona, and you don't even really have to study the map very much. What I like about maps is you just look at the big broad stroke, and boom, you can see that most of the big red dots are in Arizona. Definitely in the west, they're not in the east. Then they talk about bulk gaining industry, and beer and cola is a good example of that. And what you do there is you want to be close to your customer, because why do you want to pay to transport water? So in other words, you just transport the syrup and then have a bottling company put some water in it and sell it to your local customers. And when you look at this map, again, you don't even have to study it a whole lot. You just look at it and you say to yourself, wow, there are a lot more dots on this map than there were back when we were looking at Arizona and copper. And talking about steel, we can talk about steel production inside the United States, and we can think of it also as a bulk reducing industry. And it started off from Pittsburgh to the southern Great Lakes, and then it moved closer to the Mojave Range because it could get more iron ore and coal. And look at the map. It's real interesting. So we start off here in Pittsburgh in the mid-1800s. Then in the Pittsburgh was late 1800s, we're over here on the southern side of the Lake Erie, and then early 1900s, we're over here at the southern side of Lake Michigan. So what's the key word? The key word is there's been a westward movement. Steel production around the world in 1980 compared to 2013, so we're only talking 33 years. The United States went from 14% to 6%, and China went from 5% to 49%. And saying the same thing with the map, it looks like this. So here we are in 1980, and you can see that Japan and Russia and the United States were big players. And now here we are in 2013, and you see China has captured most of the market. South Korea increased a little bit. The United States lost a lot, Japan lost a lot, and Russia lost a lot. So the consequences of this movement. The Chinese have excess capacity. They know that. And what that means is that you have an oversupply, and they don't want to do much about it, or they're in a conundrum because they don't want to do anything to hurt employment. What the Communist Party wants is stability and control. So they have this understanding with the public. It's like, we'll provide you economic security, economic growth, and you give us political security. And so it's this trade-off. And so they know they have excess capacity, and they know they need something to do about it, but they are afraid to take the medicine, restrict, reduce that employment. That would cause unemployment. What do you do with those people? So their solution has been to sell it to us, sell it to dump. Dumping is what we accuse the United States and other OECD members accuse them of dumping, meaning they sell it below cost, and it's hard to compete that way. If you're looking at it from the Chinese point of view, you got to think about the progress they've seen. They have had growth rates for the last 10 years of around 6 or 7%. Back in the 1980s, they had a growth rate of 13, 14%. So remember the rule of 70. if you divide 7%, let's just say they've had 7%. Let's say you're 18 years old. 7% into 70 goes 10 years. So from 18 to 28, you've seen stuff around you double. Then from 28 to 38, you've seen that double. So that's 4 times more. Here you are at 48, you know, it's 16 times bigger. And so that rule of 70, this growth rate, it means that the people have seen progress. It means that your cousins and your uncles, all of them are living better. Well, no, you got to be careful. Not all of them, because it's very unequal distribution. But I mean, the people that are on the upward growth are doing better. And so now the middle class is present, and the middle class wants a lot of things that any middle class wants. You know, just look at you and I in the mirror, and that's what they would want. So whether it's fair or not is, I think, more of a political issue than a geography one, but all you can say is that, wow, China's the big winner here with steel. Labor costs, let me talk about that. So as the book says, labor is only 5% of the cost of making an auto, but automobile production is capital intensive, whereas labor is a big cost of making a shirt, and so it's labor intensive. In other words, there's a bigger portion of labor in making a t-shirt than there is labor in making a car. And so the capital is required to make that labor cost so small. That's what makes the labor cost so small, is the big investment that you have to have in the capital. And all of this is, according to economists, is an international division of labor. And the whole idea is that you trade Florida oranges for Virginia tobacco, or you trade Boeing airplanes for Brazilian coffee. It's the same principle. It's this division of labor. And so it says that countries should specialize in the things that they do best. But now, high-wage nations can still compete. And an example of that is Germany produces not only precision equipment, but also high-quality textiles. So when you're talking about low wages, this equation right here is very important. It says labor costs are equal to wages divided by some measure of productivity. And the whole idea of productivity, if it takes me an hour to mow my grass and you can do it in 55 minutes, then you're more productive than I am. And theoretically, you can use that surplus 5 minutes to do something productive with. And so all of capitalism is driven by this idea of productivity. And so it's the denominator. And if you can just visualize, if you get that denominator up high enough, even though the numerator, the wage, even though that might be a big number, if the denominator, the productivity, is big enough, it means that the labor cost has actually gone down. So that's one way we can compete with low-wage nations, is that we're looking at labor costs, not just wages. In any event, the question for us is where to compete. And from principles of economics, you would say that you compete in those activities that you feel like you have a comparative advantage, something that you do good. Here you see, you don't even need to see this. You already knew that there's a big division between the rich countries and the poor countries. I think it is interesting to note that Mexico right here, it has much higher labor costs than China and India, but yet we make our Fords and other automobiles here and then transship them up to us. In terms of clothing, textiles would be a low-skill, low-cost worker environment. And as they tell you in the book, the statistic, it accounts for 6% of world manufacturing, but 14% of employment. And so what that means is that it's a labor-intensive industry. And looking for some examples, looking at China and India, they have about half of the world production of cotton spinning and about 90% of the world production. So it's like, wow. Let me just close out with comparative advantage and the international specialization of labor. The idea of comparative advantage, it says, let me say it this way. Suppose I can paint my house 2 times faster than you can, and I can do my taxes 3 times faster than you can. The economist says that I ought to do one thing and you ought to do the other, not that I do both of them, even though I can absolutely do things better than you. I should specialize in taxes because I can do that relatively better than I can do painting. So I specialize in taxes and let you specialize in painting, and then we trade with each other. And in a big market, you use money to do the trading. And so the whole idea behind most of mainstream economics is to promote trade because they say voluntary trade benefits both parties. If it doesn't, why would you have engaged in the transaction voluntarily? And so that's the idea, is this comparative advantage, and what it does, it says that we should specialize our resources. So of course Brazil is good for coffee, and of course the United States is good for Boeing aircraft. You know, so each country has its own set of resources, both physical and labor force wise, and that's what's happening in a global market. Thanks. Bye.